Welcome back, guys, to Friday Facts number 401 with me, Massive Dynamic. This week, we've got another long and detailed explanation of the Friday Facts, and it is about map generation on Nauvis. So it's nothing new, nothing really surprising, but it is kind of good news about map generation on Nauvis. If you've been playing Factorio for a while, you know that the map generation is a little bit buggy, a little bit weird, and it looks like Arendelle has fixed it, straightened it all out. It looks pretty good, actually. So let's take a look at what he says. Basically, he's got a lot of words here introducing the subject of map generation and why he got into it. He noticed a few things that were not working correctly. In fact, some of the decoratives were set to basically stack on top of each other, and they are generated kind of in sequence. So one item is set, and then another item is set, and then another item is set. But some of those items were had the same generation algorithm, and so they were basically setting the items on top of each other, which means that the ones that were put on top were not generating at all. So basically there are some decoratives that have been in the game that we have not seen because they are not being able to generate, because they're set to generate on top of existing generated images. So it's going to improve the overall look of the game. Some of these things are kind of nuanced, kind of subtle, like this one here, the dunes. So the dunes go from this in the old way to this in the new way, so that they're more blended, a little more seamless. So here's an example here of a map section, and you can see this is the old dunes, what they look like, and here's the new dunes. I'll be an eye doctor here. Here's the old dunes, and here's the new dunes. Very subtle difference, but it is somewhat better. So this is what I was saying about the missing decoratives that he found. So he shows this really detailed map in Blender of how the decoratives are placed, and it shows that they're stacked on top of each other, and that some items cannot be placed, as I said, because they're placed on top of other items that are already existing. So we never get to see them. So he shows what the maps will now look like with the improved generation. So here's some images of what the maps can look like. I mean, these are kind of subtle differences. I mean, really, it won't make a difference in gameplay at all to me. I don't know if you're really big on decoratives. It might make a difference to you, but it really doesn't matter to me so much. But here, he talks about the cliffs and cliff generation, and this is something that I had always noticed, and it always bothered me, which is why I usually don't play with cliffs, and maybe you feel the same as I do, that cliffs are just annoying. They're not useful as walls. He goes into that and actually explains why that is true. And basically, he explains that cliffs are set up in the old generation. Basically, they follow the line of the lakes, which is something that I've always noticed. I'm sure you've noticed it too, that the cliffs are basically, they outline the lakes, and that makes them pretty much completely useless. And the reason that they did that mostly was to avoid cliffs causing impenetrable barriers where neither you nor the biters could travel. So what he did is he had a look at the whole generation of cliffs and lakes and also trees, and went in and kind of tweaked all these things to make it much more conducive to a much better map. So we'll get into it here a little bit. So part of it was making the cliffs generate in such a way that they create these kind of mesa terrain areas where you have large open plains, and then you also have these sort of elevated mesa places, which is a bit better. And also, he got into the precision of cliffs and why that is difficult to accomplish. And here's an example here. And he did something with the smoothing of the cliffs, and this is very subtle. I mean, I can see that there is a difference, but I can't say that I perceive a difference that's going to change anything for me. But there's that. Also, he talks about free-forming cliffs, and how this is what I was saying about how the cliffs follow the terrain of the lake versus going like perpendicular to the lakes, so that you end up with things like this, which could actually be used as a wall, because these are pretty much useless if you're trying to use these as defense, because you'd have to build a wall across here, and then it just makes it hard to build your wall, because you have to get from here, you have to go all the way around here to build this side of the wall, and then back around here, and then back around here to build that side of the wall. Just useless. Versus if the cliffs were like this, you could add a wall here and a wall here, and that would be a nice defensive structure. So here he gets into more detail about, I mean, he's just showing different versions of the same thing, about how this is another visualization of the elevations. Dark are the low areas, bright are the high areas. And now with this new generation, you can get structures like this, which is sort of a lake bed, or I'm sorry, not a lake bed, but a riverbed, a river biome, which is really nice. I like that a lot. And then also you get these dry sort of riverbeds like this, a canyon basically formation, which is a nice looking feature. Then he gets into the terrain itself and why the terrain generation is kind of wonky. And once again, we'll see that the cliffs closely mirror the lake shapes, especially here in this slider. Right here, if you look closely at wherever the cliffs are, you'll see that, like this island right here, this island, watch this island right here. As I slide past, you'll see that the cliffs sort of form the east side of that island. Yeah, so as you add moisture, as we move from, as I move this from the left to the right, you'll see that the moisture here, basically the water flows into this area. Like this would be a low valley maybe, and you'll see that's the way that works. Which is, I guess it's fine in one way, but in another way, it's not fine, because it creates these cliffs that are not very useful. So he's edited that and made that generate, basically made the cliffs generate in a much better and more usable fashion. And here he gets into the water scale. So I don't know if you've seen my recent series where I'm doing a swamp map, but this was an issue with map generation there. And he sort of fixed that so that the map generation, even for a wetland, is going to be much, much better, much more customizable. He's leaving the old, he'll say that at the very end, but he's leaving the old tools in, but also adding new, basically new tweak options for your map generation. So we're going to have much more control over what the map looks like, and have a lot more options for making more different variations in the map. So here he talks about dead ends and how they can form. Like here, you've got a canyon situation with a lake right in the middle of the canyon, which means that you cannot navigate past it. There's not enough room to get your vehicle or to walk by on foot. So that was an issue that he had to address. And so the way that he did that, and we'll talk about it later, this is a similar situation with trees and a cliff forming a barrier between the path through the trees. And let's see, here's another one where there's a stretch of land, but it's blocked with thick trees so that you can't pass there. I mean, you can pass there, it's just difficult to pass that one, at least. So he talks about how he fixes that. And part of something that he ran into here was that one tree, and you'll see this is another Blender three-dimensional map here of this is tree density. And you'll see that this one tree could never spawn on Nauvis because it was in a temperature zone that does not exist on Nauvis. So he also found that and was able to add that tree back into the game so that we'll have a new tree. And he asks if you can find it here. No, I can't find it. I have no idea. All the trees look the same to me, basically. I'm not going to see any difference in the trees. I don't look at them that closely in the first place. Secondly, they don't interest me enough. And thirdly, I'm always chopping them down, so it doesn't matter to me. But we will have a new tree to cut down. Also, so this is the path generation that I was talking about earlier. How the trees can form blockades to your path. Also, cliffs can, so can lakes. So here's a detailed map generation, path generation, algorithm, and you'll see the left is, or the red is canyon paths, blue is land bridges, and green are tree paths. And so you'll see that now there's always a path. There's always going to be a path to find your way across the map. So however you navigate, there will always be a way through, and the cliffs will be more interesting, the lakes will be more interesting, the trees will be more interesting, and the paths will be more interesting. So I do like that. That is going to make for some nice gameplay options. And finally, he gets into basically putting it all together into contiguous map generation. That's going to be more attractive, more interesting gameplay. So here is the result of that. And as you can see, the cliffs, there are cliffs, but they're not following the lakes. They do create these sort of mesa environments, kind of elevated plains. And the lakes are there. It just looks better. Just looks better all in all, I think. And here it is at different scales. If that means anything to you, the ores will still remain at their normal scale, but the map itself is generated at different scales. Here's a nice land bridge. As you can see, the cliff forms a natural wall here, although it's not in the perfect location, but it is at least usable. You could use it as a pinch point here. Very nice. Here's some pathing through the trees and the cliffs where you have the ability to navigate, and the paths are accessible. Same here in more of a brown environment. And here's one on another land bridge with paths through the trees. He says it kind of simulates the animal migration, which is nice, but he doesn't say anything about adding any wildlife to the map in any way. But here he says the safety net for all these changes is that the new terrain is extremely customizable. Even if you don't like some setting, it's easy to adjust the map the way you like it. For example, I made some extra changes to the cliff frequency slider so that a value below 100 will remove cliffs from huge regions of the map. Also, if you really like the old terrain, it's still there along with the single island map gen option. So there you have it, guys. That's the news for this week. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back next week. We're still waiting for some really good big news that we haven't seen yet, but we know that they're slow rolling us. They're waiting till the end. So we are closing in on it. Week by week, we're getting closer. But that's it for now. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.